Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. It's Sean Hussey here, joined once again by my brother Daniel.
How's it going?
And again, it's Cheltenham preview week. It's day two, which will be St. Patrick's Day at Cheltenham. And joining us, we've got an Irish Field contributor and from the Sports Lane podcast, Brian Dowling, live from Meath. Brian, how are you getting on?
How are you, lads?
A lot has happened since our last podcast, and especially Goshen. Dan, do you want to talk us through what happened?
Yeah, well, I hadn't initially remembered that we forgot about him. I was only listening to a podcast ahead of Saturday's race, and he obviously ran in the Kingwell hurdle, and someone made a great excuse for his last time out, saying Goshen, he was kind of held up slightly in the race. I can't remember what month it was, his reappearance of the season, and he hated it, and he finished 10 out of 10. So from there, I was kind of nervous going in, and to be honest, it was great seeing him back. He looked like he was back to his old self, back to his triumph form. And like, for example, I know, Brian, you made the case on Aspire Tower based on that triumph form. Well, we've obviously got to give Goshen a major shout now. I was watching on ITV, and as far as I know, I think I remember right that Ed Chamberlain said the sponsors Betway had gone 10-1 for the champion hurdle straight after the Betway Kingwell hurdle. Now, if that was true, because I remember thinking, I was kind of leaving the room, I was in and out of the room, and I kind of went, geez, that's a great price still based on that performance. But now that he's been backed into 7-2, 4-1, I think the 4-1's gone. It might just be 7-2. It's really, really short now. But it will be a great race, and I do think he will lead, and I do think he'll have a lot of them in trouble. And I personally still stick with Honeysuckle. It's going to be, it's honestly, Brian, it's probably one of the races of the festival now in Champion Hurdle.
Yeah, I think after that now it's really blowing this whole thing right open. I mean, I wouldn't be changing my pick from Honeysuckle either. I mean that. Yeah, look, I mean, there's plenty of cases to be made. He'd have won the Triumph last year if he'd stayed up. He was very rampant with Wincanton last week. I mean, he was very, very impressive. He was back to his old self. It was an absolute rampant performance. He could have probably went around again and still beaten everyone in the field. I mean, like, Song for Someone was probably a worthy favourite. I mean, he was a very impressive winner. He was a good winner of the Unibet International Hurdle when it was ran in December when Goshen was last seen, and obviously he was last of that field, and it didn't really look like he possessed some of the old zest of last season. And I mean, he obviously put all that behind him last week, and he seems to be back in form. I think Gary Moore has he obviously was devastated last season. I think he's trying to right the wrongs now with getting him back here, and like he's going to be primed for this. I mean, look, it's hard to know. Like, it's hard to find really a reason into how his performances were so bad over the last while. I mean, I couldn't really fault too much over it. Like, he was second, he was last in a 1.5 mile handicap at Haydock. He went to Goodwood, then he ran in a 1.5 mile handicap again, was third of 7, finishing third. Probably was a bit short from, and then went to Cheltenham for that Unibet International Hurdle and was last. So when you're looking at it at that stage, I think you were probably right to kind of say to stick with your people near the head of the market, because you didn't know what sort of performance he was going to really bring. And I think that run at Wincanton last week has now he's probably got a bit of his confidence back. He'll go here, as he said, he probably will lead. It's hard to know now where the pace is going to come from in the race. Is it going to come from Goshen? Is it going to come from Silver Streak? Is it going to come from Honeysuckle? So it's going to be a fair tactical affair. I think it's after really sort of putting a real spanner in the works now. It's going to be a lot harder of an affair than what was probably promised before he ran last week. But I mean, it's definitely, it's great that he's back in such good form. I wouldn't be changing my pick, but definitely it's going to be such a good race. This is my favorite race of the week at Cheltenham. I think this Champion Hurdle, it always has been. Be very hard to top, and this is a class renewal.
Yeah, Sean, just before you come back in to finish on that, like, it's definitely a race that's going to miss the crowd, not the horses themselves, but just me personally will miss being there, because the excitement last year when Goshen turned that bend, I know it's the different course, when he turned that bend miles cleared in the Triumph, the place was going absolutely bananas. And if he does something similar, it's going to be like, I my one concern with Honeysuckle is if Goshen can out quicken up a little bit clear of her. Like, I do think if they get into a battle, Honeysuckle will 100% stay up the hill. But, I think I'm quoted. I listened back to the podcast. I think I'm quoted saying, 5-2 is a great price. She'll be 6-4 today. I'll probably say now 3-1 is a good price. She'll probably be 9-4 on the day, but the money's already come for Goshen. I was kind of waiting. It was mad that the amount of movement on the Goshen in 24 hours, even after the win, as I said. But yeah, it's set up well. It's a brilliant race. I'll be sticking with my nap for Cheltenham on day one is Honeysuckle. However, it's going to be some race. Yeah,
I'm sure there won't be too many people who'll begrudge Jamie Moore going up up the hill at Cheltenham and winning. Another point we're going to discuss, something that's happened again since our last podcast. Amateur jockeys will not be permitted to race at the Cheltenham Festival. It's because of the UK's government, the roadmap for professional and elite sport. Brian, I'm going to get your take on it. I mean, it's often said that the amateur jockeys are as good as professionals. You know, your likes of Patrick Mullins, JJ Codd. Do you want to discuss this and why you think it's kind of a real kick in the teeth for those guys?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a disappointing. It's disappointing news in the sense that it kind of makes Cheltenham in the, like, you know, there are 3 amateur only races at the festival. And I think it's something that they always look forward to during the year. You know, you can think of all the great stories that have come out of famous races over the last 10 years on the amateur scene, most notably probably Oscar Delta's devastating unseating of Jane Mangan jumping the last when she was a couple of lengths clear of Coleman Sweeney on Salsify, and like, you think of all the great days, and like, obviously Coleman Sweeney went on to record a great victory, and 67,000 Gold Cup crowd were in absolute euphoria, and here was Jane Mangan in floods of tears after the final fence. And you know, it's these people really kind of make racing, because like, it wasn't as if it was about the money or it was about anything like that Jane Mangan wanted to win that race. Like, it was trained by her father. This is what she was 18 years of age. Her dream was about to come true. I mean, it had been a family story to last a lifetime. And you probably missed those sort of things this year at Cheltenham, absolutely. And I think the biggest news that's come out of it now is Patrick Mullins. I think he's going to be the guy who's going to have the big decision to make with the whole thing. Like, the likes of Jamie Codd and Derek O'Connor, like, those guys work in the point-to-point scene. They have such a great point-to-point sort of like, persona about them. That's what they do. Like, that's their life. And I mean, they're happy enough to come into the races, riding the hunters chases, riding the bumpers, pick up the spare rides in the big races, and you know, you can be full of confidence when you put them up. So I think that Patrick now is at the stage where, look, he's a fairly big decision to make. I was talking to someone the other day who knows a guy who works below in Will, who's a few lads that he knows in Willie's, and he's saying that he's 90% sure that he is going to turn professional. So like, there's a couple of things that are going to have to come in with that. First of all, you have to prove, the IHRB and the BHA have a policy that if you wish to apply for a professional license, you will be required to demonstrate their intent to remain professional. You can't just take it out because of the current public health restrictions that have stopped amateur jockeys to ride. If he wants to be professional now, he has to stay professional for at least 6 months. So that's the first thing he has to sort of think about. Like, there's loads of reasons why guys wouldn't go professional. Like, I know Patrick Mullins, like, he has always stated that training has been his real passion. He always wanted to do that. Like, there's loads of things. One is being weight. I mean, his lowest riding weight in the last 12 months has been 11 stone 3. He's a very big man, Patrick Mullins. You know, most of the time when you see him riding, he's riding in graded races, or he's riding top weights and handicaps that are carrying 11 stone, 7, 10, those sort of weights that he's able to do. You never see him really towards the bottom end of the weights. That could be one decision why he wouldn't do it. He obviously wants to be involved in Willie's, wants to be a part of the team there, wants to really help them out. So if he turns professional, he mightn't lose that angle, but he'll probably lose a few of his bumper rides. He'll lose that sort of thing as well. But the big challenge is that, like, Patrick Mullins is the most successful amateur jockey in the history of Irish racing. He's rode 650 winners. He has to ride, if he rides any more than 25 winners in the next 6 months, he can't reapply for his amateur license. He has to stay professional. So like, and then if he turns around then and stops riding halfway through it, then it's going to come back to the whole thing about the intent of actually taking the license out in the first place. So there's a couple of things about that. I mean, I wouldn't blame him if he does turn professional for it. I mean, the book of rides he has, most notably Kilcrut in the bumper, like he's won the bumper once. He'll want to win it again. Like, he'll have to ride the favourite in the Hunter's Chase, Billaway. You know, he'll be riding Sharjah. He'll be riding Mellon in the Ryanair. I would not blame him at all for doing this. He won't, like, he's ridden out his claim already, so he won't have that to help him in the handicaps. He'll probably be put to the top of the weights. So look, it's a very tough decision to make. I think he'll do it. I don't blame him if he does it. I think he's probably right to do it, but it's the onslaught of the whole thing now that's going to really challenge him going forward, as to how he's going to really sort of challenge himself into this. It's going to be a big step for him, but I think he's probably right to sort of do it. But that's probably the most controversial factor of the whole amateur jockey. He's probably the most notable figure that's going to be affected by it. So I think that's probably the main reason for his decision, to kind of the way he's thinking about it.
Dan, do you have a take on it? Are you similar to Brian? And yeah, I think Brian's right. I don't think anyone would begrudge Patrick Mullins taking those rides at Cheltenham.
Yeah, Brian's covered it pretty well there, to be honest with you. Just to add that, yeah, he's also got obviously Sharjah, Melon. They're serious rides, and Jesus, especially with everything going on, like to be sitting at home and watching that, knowing you could have been on it if you just turned professional. You mentioned 90%. I'd say that's about right. I'd say he is more than likely gonna turn. Like the one kind of annoying thing about the amateurs, give Maxine O'Sullivan for example, she would have been riding. It came to pass, and obviously she won't be able to ride now because amateurs aren't allowed. But she could be leading down that horse. Do you know what I mean? In the Cheltenham Festival, but she won't be able to ride the horse. So it just it's frustrating, but. The BHA, obviously based on Cheltenham going ahead last year, and the bad publicity there, it would have been bad publicity in general to go against the government. And once they made that decision, it was never going to change. So, yeah, I'd expect Patrick Mullins. People kind of going, why doesn't Jamie Codd, etc., change? But like Jamie Codd, he's going to be up against rides against professional jockeys now that there's no amateur only races. So, he actually might not even have gotten that many rides anyway. Now because there's no amateur jockey, so he won't be changing. So yeah, Patrick, it's frustrating, it's disappointing. It's what makes the Cheltenham Festival brilliant, the amateur riders, that sort of thing. But it's probably not, BHA were kind of left with no real decision other than to accept the government's decision.
Well, moving on to the first race we're going to look at on day 2, which is the Ballymore Novices Hurdle, over 2 miles, 5 furlongs. Last year's winner, Envoy Allen, some of the previous winners, Sam Crow, York Hill, Faugheen, and 6 of the last 7 have been Irish trained. So Brian, looking at the market, who do you fancy?
This is probably the most competitive novices race of the festival. I would have no doubt in saying that. I think this is an absolute cracker of a race. I think there's so many angles in this. There's so many horses that can run well here. I have the favourite backed already. I backed him at 8-1 before he ran at the Dublin Racing Festival. I wouldn't cash out on it. I'm happy enough to stick with it. Do I think he'll win? I'm about 60% think he'll win. I'm 40% that he won't. And there's plenty of reasons for that. I think his main challenge has to come from Bob Ollinger. I think that if you were having a bet now, with the prices at the way they are, I would definitely be backing Bob Ollinger. I think that he was so good at Naas that day. He really showed his authority in this division. I don't like people are going to make countless cases, and obviously they're going to try and pick holes in that Naas form. But I think that he was very, very good. He stayed brilliantly up the hill. Obviously, it didn't help with sort of a couple of fallers, and I think Blue Lord was his closest challenger. He was about 7 lengths second, but he just was so. I was taken by the way he went up the hill at Naas, and we spoke about the impact of tracks in Ireland where good to prepare for Cheltenham, and Naas and Navan are both of them, and these are the only 2 tracks he's raced on this season. 2 of the 3 tracks he's raced on this season. He was a 14-length winner of a maiden hurdle at Navan, and then his other run this season, he was second behind Fernie Hollow, who was last season's champion bumper winner in a maiden hurdle at Gorn last November. So I don't think that there's any real flaws in this form. I would take him at 4-1. As I said to you, I've already backed Gallier de Mainel. He was very good at Christmas, even better at the Dublin Racing Festival. Stays really, really well. Probably will be suited by Cheltenham. Goes well left-handed. I would have no issues with his chances. But like, if you're to go through the rest of the field, like Brave Man's Game was a very good winner of the Challow Hurdle. Like, was 10 lengths going away. That's over 2.5 miles. The extra furlong here will just be no issue to him either. Like, that was on soft ground at Newbury. No problem. He seems versatile with his ground. He won at Newbury again in November on good ground. So I don't think that the conditions will alter his chances in any way. He, as I said, he was a good winner. He won going away. So there's a case to be made for him too. I just think that if you're to try and find, it's kind of a bit like, this race is very similar to the Arkle in the sense that it's like, which of the top 3 do you pick? So I said, if I was to pick one of them, I would probably, at this stage, I'd back the favourite, but I would probably pick Bob Ollinger I thought his performance at Naas was probably better than Gallier de Mainel's at the Dublin Racing Festival, I think anyway. But if I was to back a horse now, like, you could make a case for a few of these. Like, Tom Lacey has a very lively contender in Admiral, like a Dremel, should I say. He won over 2 miles 5 at Warwick, and he was very gutsy up there. Won it only by a neck in the 3-way finish when he kind of veered a little bit right. you know, if they sort that issue out and keep him on the straight and narrow, he can fly up that hill because he proves he stays all day. He won at Haydock last before the turn of the year. That was over 2 miles. The step up didn't do him any issues. Cape Gentleman was very good at the weekend at Kempton, albeit over 2 miles. Wouldn't have an issue with his stepping up and trip. He won the Irish Cesarewitch last year. He's well suited to big fields. No issue to him. There's so many horses in this race that you can just say, yeah, you could back him. You could back him as well. That guy was good. It's very competitive. It's an excellent race. There's a couple of horses in this that have entries in various contests. One being Atlantic Fairy. She was good the last day as well. I think she's 33-1. Very good at Navan last week in the Apples Jade Mayor's Novice Hurdle. Wouldn't have an issue with her going up against the lads here. You know, she'll get £7 allowance. That'd be my take on the race. Anyway, you could easily back 4 or 5 of these. If it was to back one at a price, I'd make a case for Atlantic Fairy going up against the lads. No problem. It depends on where she goes. She could go to the Albert Bartlett either. But yeah, this is excellent. This is a really, really good race.
Yeah, Dan Gollard, the Mesnia 11-4 with most for the Donnellys. Kind of famous colours now in horse racing. They have a few big names. Do you think he's got a real chance for this one? As Brian says, it's a toughly contested race.
Yeah, is it Gallier de Menil, Brian? I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know. Gallier de Menil, or I don't know how to pronounce it.
GDM. I was saying to one of the lads here before coming on. GDM's a good one. Atlantic Ferry is like 6-1 in places there. You know, if you were aware that he was going, I'm sure there's better prices nor no bet. For me personally, I do think it's between the top 3. I agree with Brian in terms of it's very similar to the Arkle in that sense, although albeit it's actually a lot more competitive between the 3 in terms of the prices. Like, I wouldn't be in terms of backing up a bet now. It's definitely a race I'd wait till the day just to see who's lining up against those top 3 horses. And you know, we've spoken about this briefly about the Arkle. Sometimes when there's 3, you know, it's a 3-horse race, you know, the race can collapse or something goes wrong. But you know, the Ballymore and Supreme is interesting. So while the Supreme is 2 miles and the Ballymore is 2.5 miles, a little bit over 2.5 miles, the Ballymore sometimes ends up being more of a speed test, and the Supreme ends up being more of a staying test, and that's a lot to do with, you know, the Supreme. It's the first race. You know, jockeys have been looking forward to Cheltenham all year, and they kind of go off a little bit too quick, and you actually see that in the Arkle as well. Like the last couple of Arkles have fallen apart in terms of the likes of Put the Kettle On, have you know, picked up the pieces, that sort of thing. So you know, you're potentially looking for more of a speed horse than a staying type here in the Ballymore generally, I think. And out of the top 3, while I really like Gallier de Menil, I do have to factor in that he's a little bit shorter than the other 2, and I do think they should be even closer. I think it should be pretty similar pricing. And for me, I was very impressed with Bravesman's game last time. He thought he won very easily, and you know, I've had this problem for years in terms of punting at Cheltenham, that I'm a very Irish bias, and I'm very, very, you know, backing Irish horses. Nothing better than backing when Ruby was on a horse, and now Paul Town and Willie Mullins favourites, all that sort of thing. But I do think Brave Man's Game, Paul Nichols is a great price there at 4-1, 9-2. And it'd be interesting on the day how that dynamic changes. But for me, if you're pushing me for selection at the moment, would be Brave's Man Game. I was very impressed with him, as I said, and I do think the way the race could be run here in terms of, as I said, it could potentially be, you know, turn into a bit of a speed test towards the end. I do think Brave Man's Game can potentially quicken away from Gallier de Menil. Like Gallier de Menil, the race kind of set up, you know, stablemate Statler was, you know, setting the fractions for him out in front, and he did look in trouble for a minute turning in. I actually thought Statler had him, to be honest with you, and Statler's is going to be a 3-mile novice. Well, Gallier de Menil, this is over 2.5, so I do think Brave Man's Game has potential to quicken away from Bob Ollinger and Gallier de Menil. Take nothing away from Bob Ollinger. Agree with Brian, was very impressed last time in Naas. So yeah, it's going to be a brilliant race. For if you were to push me for selection here, it would be Brave Man's Game at the moment, but as I've said before, it does sometimes tend to change. But it is a price thing, and I do think he's probably the value at the moment of 4-1, 9-2.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've seen a lot recently about the Paul Nichols yard and maybe the strength of the jockeys involved, and a lot of people are maybe saying, is Bryony Frost making a potential to be the top jockey out of Nichols's yard? Harry Copton has ridden Brave Man's Game all the time. Have you any thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, I've seen that case made, and to be honest with you, I think Bryony almost gets a hard time in the sense that she gets so much publicity, you know, for the likes of Frodon and a few of her other big wins. She kind of puts off a lot of the racing world, for want of a better. Racing people remind me a small bit of hurling people. Sometimes they're very kind of stuck in their ways, and when they see like Bryony probably getting overpraised for some of her rides, that they kind of they've almost turned against her. And she is riding very well. Like she beat Ari Condon. Brian, you'll have to remind me the horses. Wasn't it maybe last week she beat him in a finish? I think it was during the week actually. I can't remember the horses, but she, Harry was getting a lot of stick for it. He'll be the number one jockey for Cheltenham. There's no doubt about that. And me personally, I think he's a better jockey. But yeah, Bryony, like for us, it's almost like she gets so much publicity that she's almost not getting credit for when she does well. If that makes any sense, it's almost like two wrongs kind of going there together. It's an interesting one. Bryony's riding very well. Recently enough on a couple of Paul Nicholls' second strings. And one more thing to say, like a lot of Paul Nicholls usually takes his time with his novice hurdlers. He's kind of looking for that Gold Cup horse. Like, Willie Mullins kind of dominates the novice divisions. Paul Nicholls is more focused on chasing. So that's why, Willie Mullins only won the Gold Cup like 2 years ago for the first time. So, but I do think Brave Man's Game, the fact they're sending him to Cheltenham for the Ballymore, 2.5 miles, I do think that's a good sign.
Yeah, looking to kind of go against pattern there. As I said earlier, 6 of the last 7 Irish trained, and then moving on to what was known as the RSA Chase, now the Brown Advisory Novices Chase. Of course, Brian, you might talk us through last year's winner, probably one of the most iconic finishes of last year, which was Barry Geraghty aboard Champ.
Yeah, if you ever wanted to see how good a rider Barry Geraghty ever was, I mean, I always, like a lot of people, never really filled him with confidence towards the end of his career, thought he was too old, thought he was too this, thought, oh yeah, he's finished, he's this, and then he comes out last year at Cheltenham and rides like he's just 22 again. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Barry Geraghty's, and this was one of his best rides I've ever, like, I mean, he had such an attitude with Champ that it was just like he always knew that there was something there to give. And I think he was 4 or 5 lengths second jumping the last fence.
I'd say even more. Like, yeah, he was third. Yeah. But
and he absolutely just tore up like a train. And I mean, it's very hard, as you said. Like you'd have to go back at. I can't remember the last time I've seen the Cheltenham horse finish up the hill like that. I think it was just incredible, and it was a credit to him, because a lot of other riders would have given up in that sense. They would have just said they would have taken the third at that, and probably would have just, even if they felt there was more to be given, some of them just mightn't have the capabilities of that. Now, look, I wouldn't be the greatest analyst of jockeys. I don't really find it fair to criticize them, seeing as I've never actually ridden a horse before. So I actually can't turn around and say that was a bad ride, that was this, because I've never been in that situation. So it's hard to actually judge that. But I mean, Geraghty, in my opinion, even all the time watching him, he's just a joy to look at. And I mean, that was just a brilliant ride, the way that he guided him back up the hill. And I think Manel Indo was just crying for the line by the end of it, like just wanted it just to become there. Maybe Manel Indo and Allaho took the race by the scruff of the neck, and maybe that gallop that they went at just caught them in the last 50 yards. And I mean, like, it was so close. Like, the margins were so fine, but it was an excellent race. It was probably the race of the festival last year.
I was just going to say, it was some race, and even during it, like you said, Allo and Manel Indo led pretty much throughout, and they were out jumping each other. It was brilliant. Like, and then Champ wins it at the end, madly.
And he's a good Mead man, Brian.
Exactly, he's from Drumree. That's what my granny was always. It was always a good story I used to have about Barry Geraghty. My granny would never back too much else other than what he was riding for years, and a lot of the time she got success out of it.
She would have had a very good Cheltenham last year.
Yeah.
Since retired now, Barry. Look at the favourite again. I suppose we're talking about Willie Mullins and Paul Townend, but Cheltenham brings the best out of people. And Dan, I go to you on Monkfish. Won the Albert Bartlett last year, 3 from 3 chase, and won Christmas in the Dublin Racing Festival. There's not much to not like about Monkfish.
Yeah, like I've been trying to not get him beats the wrong word, but I've been back in the latest exhibition against him, which has cost me a fair few bob, I'll be honest with you. The Albert Bartlett, I suppose Monkfish was brilliant the way a lot of things went wrong and he still won it, but he's not a hurdler, so the fact he actually won that race, looking back on it, was very impressive now. As I said, I was trying to get him beat the last 2 times in Leopardstown, and when Monkfish turned the corner, quickened up away from latest exhibition last time I just said, I'm going to stop. I'm going to actually get that back on this horse. And I find it hard in this race to look at anyone else other than Monkfish. Like, he's already, I think I'm not sure the exact price, so I'll check it out in a second.
8 to 11 I have.
Yeah, sorry, 8 to 11, I know that, but sorry, the 10 to 1 I think for next year's Gold Cup. Which you're kind of looking at.
He's the favourite for next year's Gold Cup already.
Yeah. I'll check it out in a sec to be sure of that 10 to 1, but geez, you wouldn't be all, you're kind of look, geez, that's too short, and then you think about it.
In a double.
Yeah, exactly. But he is he's amazing. He's an amazing horse, and I do think it's important. The likes of him and Envoy Allen, it's we need to appreciate these horses, because anything can happen in any given time to a horse, and these two horses running at the moment is unbelievable. Like, it really is. You can, if Shishkin wins the Arkle, you could try to maybe throw him in that category as well. But yeah, Monkfish, an absolutely machine. I won't say anything that anyone else doesn't know. It's just I was so impressed with him last time at Leopardstown. The way he jumps a fence, he's just like the perfect type for a Gold Cup. And this is obviously the Novices Gold Cup, for want of a better description of what was formerly the RSA. And yeah, like I know it's a novice chase, and I've been sucked into these odds-on short shots before, but he'll be going in my multiples Monkfish anyway. Like, it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'd be interested in the latest exhibition if he does run here to maybe follow him in behind. But like, all the talk is he'll probably go to Ferry House. I think Paul Nolan was a bit kind of disheartened after the last time finishing. There's only so many times you can finish second to a horse, but they will be devastated now if latest exhibition does go or doesn't go here and something does happen to Monkfish. But yeah, Monkfish for me, to be honest with you. I hate to be boring, but I'm really looking forward just to watch him running in Cheltenham. It's going to be absolutely amazing.
That's an interesting point Dan makes there, Brian, about trying to appreciate these horses, because like we've seen down over the years at Cheltenham, something can happen to them. I remember the Sir Eric one. That was a real shock, not only to JP, but to Joseph O'Brien as well. Is Monkfish the real deal?
I was probably the only person. I was one of the only people cheering with that Sir Eric race. It was devastating. But about 6 weeks before that Triumph Hurdle, when I was working in Inans, I got a tip for Penton Hills at 33-1 off a fella. After he won, I think it was at Fontwell or somewhere like that, or it might have been. I can't remember.
One of his 1,000 owners probably told you that, did he?
Oh yeah, he loads of owners. But I remember being told about it. It was about 6 or 8 weeks before Cheltenham, and another guy who works with me in the pub backed it as well, and he was there that day. And he said just the way the story went when Sir Eric, obviously, unfortunately, was just a shocking incident when he had to be put down. And he was saying that the whole place was just there was a real surreal atmosphere, and he was probably one of about 100 people out of 67,000 that was actually cheering when the thing came back. But you don't want to be cheering too heavily after what happened. But he'd have to made a fortune of cash, because he'd have 20 quid each way and at 33-1. So like, I wouldn't blame him in that sense. I backed it at that price as well. But no, to go back to what you're saying, before Monkfish came about on the scene, the best jumper of a fence I ever saw in my whole life was Vautour, and I'd find it very, very hard to ever find anything else other than this. But Monkfish is definitely in this Vautour category. I think Simon Hall described Vautour the year he won the Ryanair as a Giselle in equine form, and I think that Monkfish really fits that description too. I think he was just flawless at the Dublin Racing Festival. He was so good. He was very good at Christmas, but he just looked like that he was just doing enough to win the race. And whatever button was clicked after he jumped the final fence at the Dublin Racing Festival put you into this sort of it was awesome. And like it would have been brilliant to be there to clap in these guys, because it's just, you have to really appreciate what you're with here. Like, it's hard, like, and what's funny is he's dominating the field with quite good with horses in this. Like, there are some good types in this race. I mean, a case can be made here for a few of these. Like, I've done a Cheltenham accumulator already, and Monkfish is in it. I mean, I wouldn't be putting anyone off putting him into my accumulator. I think he's probably one of the bankers of the week. I would have no doubt in saying that. It's boring saying that, because obviously he's the fucking 8 to 11. Like, who wants to be backing him at that price? But like, if you're to be looking for value in this race, like, value can be found in the big breakaway at 12-1. I think he was very, very good at Cheltenham last November. I think he ran there. He was a very taken winner of a 3-mile novice chase. Won it easy. Yeah, fair enough. He mightn't have had the run of the race maybe at Exeter the last time. I think that trip was too short, 2 miles and 3. Don't think he really likes it. Then he went to Kempton for the Cotto Star Novices and was second behind Shan Blue. There's nothing wrong with that form. I think that form is quite solid. He was very good at Cheltenham last November. And he's a big, lovely looking jumper of a horse that shows that he has potential. And I would have no issue in backing him at 12-1 for Colin Tizard. Puppy will probably ride that horse. I think he's always spoken of him as being a good contender. I mean, I was listening to him a couple of times, speaking on RT and on ITV Race and these sort of things, and he's always spoken good things about the big breakaway. So I wouldn't have an issue in backing him at 12-1 up against Monkfish. He mightn't beat him, but I mean, each way money is what you're getting at. Sporting John is 14-1. Would I be backing him? No. purely for the reason that he's an awful jumper, and yet he still managed to beat Chamblou the last day at Sandown and win that Novices chase. I don't know how he managed to do it, but he
was very, very big price in running, wasn't he?
Yeah, huge. I think he was 50 or 66 to 1. But I mean, he was probably bigger than that, should I say? But I mean, his jumping just was awful, and he still managed to beat Chamblou. Fair enough, that mightn't speak well for the big breakaways for him, but at the same time, he stays. But I wouldn't be confident in his jumping, because that's what Cheltenham is all about. This is a much sounder test, even though Sandown is a very, very good. Is probably the second best track in England after Cheltenham, with the quality of what you're dealing with there. It's an excellent track. It's very similar, only that it just goes the other way. But you know, if you're to back one in this, as I said to you, I would like the big breakaway 12 to 1. I'd back that. Next Destination as an entry here. He's 8 to 1. Good jumper, stays, was second at Cheltenham before, knows his way around the place. New owners probably brought a bit more life into him. Galvin is an entry here, probably won't run. Pencil Full of Lead is an entry here. Interesting to see if he'll run. Remastered was a good winner in Ascot last week. He stays the trip too. I'd have no issue in backing him at 20 to 1. I wouldn't put anybody off backing him, because I think if anyone is going to really challenge up against Monkfish here, it's probably going to come from England. I don't think that the Irish really have much of a say in this. Coco Beach was a good winner at Navan last week, good winner of the Tiestes Chase. Interesting to see where he'll go. He's an entry here. Not sure if he'll run. If I was, like I said to you, I'd probably back the big breakaway, or if I was back another one, I would back if the cap fits. He was third in that Colo Stars novice at Christmas. He was second after that. He won a grade 1 over 3 miles at entry as a novice hurdler. Can stay this trip. He's 25 to 1. I'd like a bit of that value. Harry Fry is that. Daryl Jacob would probably right. He seems to be Simon Munir's best hope in this. So look, yeah, I think it's all about the favourite here. As I said to you, because we're at this stage with all these multiple entries, it's quite hard to delve into which ones of these are actually going to go here. Most notably, Royal Pagaille is in this. We haven't spoken about him yet. I mean, will they run him in this? I don't know. I mean, he's very impressive. It's hard to know what he's beaten, but I mean, you can't be taken away by his performances. And if he manages to, if Venetia Williams puts him in this race, now it's probably going to come down from Rich Ritchie, as he owns both of them, so he'll probably have the final say in this. And I mean, if he runs against this, it could be the battle of the festival. It really could, because I said, yeah, I wouldn't be putting anyone off back in Monkfish. I think he's been flawless. He's been excellent, but he hasn't faced anything like what Royal Pagaille is like. And I just think that 7 to 2, I probably wouldn't back him to win, but it'll be a fair duel if he does run on it. I mean, it could cause serious things. I'd say they'll probably go for the Gold Cup, but I mean, like, if he runs in this, it could turn into a serious dogfight between the two of them.
Yeah, he's 8 to 1 for the Gold Cup.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. You could go National Hunt Chase. I think, like Brian, will probably go Gold Cup. I can't see Rich Ritchie taking on Monkfish against Royal Pagaille, to be honest with you. So, just on Brian's point about the big breakaway, like he's, Colin Tizard horses haven't really been firing this year. They do sometimes tend to go well during the spring, and yeah, you can definitely make the case. Like, when I think it was he third or fourth. I think it was fourth maybe in the Ballymore, a good bit behind Boy Allen, but like he's a chaser in the making, fourth. Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't probably put you off there, but I'm really looking forward to watching Monkfish. Don't know if it'd be a betting race for me personally. Maybe someone without the favourite when the final field is declared. As they said, there's a lot of multiple entries, but Jesus, like Monkfish, I can't wait to watch him. 3 miles, like just have that on loop to watch him and Boy Allen obviously in the marsh. Those two, I just can't hide how excited I am to watch those two.
And some Gold Cup next year.
Oh, I know we're awful at I was on iRadio there mentioned last week, and I just had to bring it up. I was like, well, we got some Gold Cup coming up next year between Monkfish and Boy Allen. So Jesus, please God, they both get there, but both win their races this year. Tuck them away, keep them safe, and then next year we'll have the best Gold Cup of all time. So
I'm sure Monkfish is one of those horses that when Ruby's retired, he probably looks back and gone, if I just stayed on another couple of years, I would have had a few good winners out of it. Yeah,
he's definitely the strongest book that Willie Mullins has brought, and that's saying something to Cheltenham. So I think he has half the favourites out of the 28 races. So
yeah, and the next race we're going to discuss is another one. The next race after the RSA Chase, or the Brown Advisories Novices Chase, is the Cora Cup Grade 3 handicap, which we'll leave. And we'll move to the feature of day 2 of St. Patrick's Day, is the Queen Mother Champion Chase over 2 miles, and Willie Mullins and Paul Town and Brian dominate the market again.
Yeah, look, This is the only feature race that Willie Mullins hasn't won at Cheltenham, and he's been let down with countless favourites in the past. But I don't think that this one will let him down. I really don't. He was put up to fight it up to Altior last year, and was declared a non-runner the morning of the race, which was devastating for the whole thing. I was so looking forward to it. It was going to be a great battle, and I mean, if you're to judge it now on current form, you'd 100% be all over him at that with the field that's going here. Like, look, there's no doubting there's no doubting in the fact that Altiora is an absolutely exceptional 2-mile chaser, brilliant champion chaser over the last couple of years. Just a machine. He's dominated this division. There's nothing has been able to come up to fight against him. And he's proven his class. And even when question marks were asked about him, he was put to the test in this race last year, coming down to the final fence with Sur Royale, and he kind of grinded it out. 2 years ago, should I say? And he fought it out for them. So, like, look, I mean, when the push come to shove, he's proven it. Look, yeah, he missed it last year, which wasn't great. I got a bit mixed up there with the years. It was 2019 was the year I was thinking about, but
Skull Royale,
yeah. But look, he just, to me, with the field that he was up against at Cheltenham or at Kempton at Christmas, would have been a field that I would have thought before the race. Like, I think he was like even money favourite. I'd have thought that this is an even money shot. He should beat what he's up against here. And like, he was beaten 3.5 lengths fair and square by Nube Negra. Now, look, Kempton's a very different track to Cheltenham. It's a lot flatter. It's right-handed. It's not left-handed. I understand all that. But I don't know. It's just, it puts doubt in my mind when you're trying to look at something that's going to come up to what Jacques Poursois has done this season. I mean, he seemed to improve from his Christmas run onto the Dublin Racing Festival. He looked better. He jumped better. I mean, I don't know. It's just, Willie has spoken about this guy for the last couple of years and saying that he really, really, really likes him, really thinks he's the horse that he's been waiting for in this race to finally break his duck. If you're to look at what the rest of it is there, I would probably agree and say, yeah, I would take him in this. I'd put him up. I'd say he's the horse to win it. Yeah, he's 4-6. Like, it's not really too much of a backable price. But I mean, the more I look at the rest of them, the more that you can just say, well, he ran well here and he ran well there, but he didn't do good here. And there's question marks around all the rest of them, where Jacques Poursois has just shown up to Cork, shown up to Leopardstown twice, won handy, and shows that he's able to take on these. So from that perspective, I'd take that.
I've one for you here. The last 12 winners of the Champion Chase have all had raced at Cheltenham before. Jacques Poursois has never raced at Cheltenham. I know what you said earlier there. Is that something that would be in the back of your mind, in the fact Willie's record?
Yeah, so that's probably the only thing that will be in your mind with Willie's and Willie's record, exactly what you said there. So, like, yeah, that would be a worry. Of course it would. It would obviously be a worry, but it still wouldn't be enough to put me off him. It 100%. I just, as I said to you, I think that when you look at the rest of the field, when you look at his main challengers, so Altior, Nube Negra, and Politolog, you could say, right, well, Altior is a good winner of this race before, wasn't good at Christmas. Then you can look at Nube Negra. Nube Negra beat Altior Christmas. What did he do before that? Like, I mean, he was second at Warwick behind Rouge Vif by 7 lengths, right? What did Rouge Vif do? He ran in the Tingle Creek, was fancied, was bet 7, was bet out the gate. Politolog, last year's champion chaser, favourite for the Tingle Creek, bet 7 lengths by First Flow. That'd be the only horse I'd back in this race that I put up here, would be First Flow. Because he's done what Jacques Poursois has done. He's done his job this season. He's 12-1. He's probably the best each way value in the race. But look, I don't know. I think that this is a very unique renewal of the Champion Chase in the sense that that Willie has another short price favourite, but has all these questions to answer. Never won the race, never raced the Cheltenham, blah 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 blah. But I just think that the rest of them have question marks over them whereas he doesn't. And the only question mark is the Cheltenham form. But that wouldn't be enough to put me off him.
First Flow was a big winner of the Betfair Exchange. Dan, hard again to look past Willie and Paul?
Initially, yeah. The more I look at this race, I think it's low-key competitive, and I would probably, at the prices, take the field over Chacun Pour Soi 10-11. So I've had a good look at this race. First of all, there was a horse last year that came fourth in the champion hurdle. That I'd actually nearly forgotten that happened. So obviously Epiton won, Sharjah, Darver Star, but back and forth was Silas Emery, who was who made his comeback there in Naas, and it was very impressive over 2 miles. And he will be now focused on the champion chase this year. So he's a 25-1 shot there at the moment. You've got Altior's record at Cheltenham is phenomenal, and you something, Sean, you touched on, which I was going to bring up. It is a concern to me that Chacun Pour Soi hasn't run at Cheltenham, albeit it isn't his fault that he hasn't run at Cheltenham. But the fact is, he still hasn't. It's a completely different track to any track he's run over before. I know there's similarities between that and Leopardstown, but like he was very impressive last time out in Leopardstown. He is a worthy favourite, but Altior's he's 5-0 in Cheltenham. He's got a phenomenal record there. The way even he wasn't at his best in 2019 is Brian mentioned, and he still managed to win that in 2018. He was unbelievable. 2017 he was unbelievable in the Arkle, if I have my years right, and then 2016 he won the Supreme, which was still unbelievable. I actually think he'd have dominated the hurdle races for years as well. But you've got Altior in your corner there, I know he wasn't that impressive at Christmas. He was, I think he was given Nubernegra £6, which is something to focus on. So you've Nubernegra, obviously, who personally I don't think is that good. A lot of kind of people have given him an each way squeak. Yeah, you could probably argue that. You've got Plitolog last year's winner, and here's one for you. I was one of my mates there. He wouldn't be that into horses. He was over at Cheltenham with me, and he was so impressed with Plitolog's jumping and the way he won that race. And obviously that's no form, but as in there's no timings there. There's nothing. But it's interesting that someone outside of racing, the one performance he was impressed with all week was Plitolog, and the way he did jump in that champion chase was fantastic. So he will be thereabouts. So he'll run his race. Put the Kettle On is one that interests me, and Arkle winners do have a phenomenal record in winning the champion chase the following year or going very close to it. And he won the Arkle last year. I know I mentioned at the top of the show it was a bit of a slog there at times, but he's another horse with unbelievable Cheltenham record. He's won races there in December meeting as well. So you've got other horses there. You've got First Flow, as Brian mentioned. You got Sco Royale. Vacadary for me would run in the Ryanair, but he could still run here. Rouge Vif. I think it is low key. While there's no horse that I think can definitely beat Chacun Pour Soi here, there's a lot of horses that if Chacun Pour Soi underperforms, we still don't know exactly what he has off the bridle. I don't think he was. I remember he beat me, and it was last year, so I was at the Leopardstown. It was a Christmas I'm not sure. It might have been the Dublin Chase last year. And I wasn't impressed with him between the last and the line. I think Paul Townend was giving him a good shake of the reins, and I don't think he quickened up any further from in. This is all punching holes in a phenomenal race, or don't get me wrong, but I can leave him alone at the moment. And I'd gone from kind of saying, kind of writing off these horses to having a good look at the race there this weekend. And if I was to have a bet, I'll be waiting for the day of me personally. But if anyone is looking for a bet, put the Kettle On 12-1, no runner, no bet. She could go to the mare's chase, but she'd more than likely, Harry Bromhead said she's going to go here to the champion chase. The owners want to take their chance in the champion chase based on that Arkle form last year. So that for me, and I'll also be interested in Silas Emery, 20s, 25-1, a lot of blue on odds checker, obviously, after his win today. So I think there's enough in the race that it is low-key competitive. And I think as we build towards Cheltenham, people will get on board with Altior and the English form. There's a lot of English horses predominantly that are taking on Chacun Pour Soi. And Chacun Pour Soi could go out to odds against on the day. It'd be very interesting. Again, it's a price thing. If Chacun Pour Soi was 2-1 or maybe 5-2, I'd be obviously all over him. But I just think at the price, he can be left alone for me at odds on till the day anyway. And a selection on the race, it's put the Kettle On. I think her record at Cheltenham is phenomenal, and a lot of horses in this race. Record at Cheltenham is very good, and that question mark is Chacun Pour Soi. He hasn't run at Cheltenham yet, and while that isn't his fault, same with an Ergamine, it is a worry, and you don't know until these horses go to Cheltenham. There's so many Clandas Obo's a horse that springs to mind. He won 2 King Georges, and he doesn't have a good Cheltenham record. So for me, Silas Emery or put the Kettle On probably at the moment.
It's probably one of them as well that Willie Mullins and Paul Townend have such a busy week. Not everything's going to go their way as well, and that's definitely something to look out for. And as Brian rightly said, Willie is looking to win his first champion chase. We're
just on that, Sean, the favourites get beaten. I look at it's hard to you have to remind yourself every year these favourites will get beaten. Some of them will get beaten, and it's so hard to put up a selection against a favourite like an Mboyan or a Monkfish or a Chacun Pour Soi, but one of them will get beaten. That's 100% guaranteed. It's more likely they all don't win than they do win. That's a fact. So
Yeah. We're gonna skim over the cross country chase. But Dan, it's one of your favourite races at Cheltenham. You've obviously been to a good few, and it's one of the only races, or the only race, where fans can get out on the track and get up close and personal.
I love it. Like, it gets a hard time from like the tipsters that are, oh, I've no interest in the cross country. You get a few laughs at preview nights. I love it. Didn't love it that much last year now in Tiger Hall. I was so certain he was going to win. Jeez, I had way too much money on him. Gave about half my winnings back from other years. But yeah, it's a brilliant race. It's very interesting. Easy land. He wasn't great at Christmas. And Aja, I'm going to go with Aja. I haven't actually heard it pronounced properly, but he, same trainer there, and there's talk that he, at the prices, he's probably the bet there from the stable. So that's interesting. He's about 6 or 7 to 1. So for those that are thinking that Easy Land's is going to turn up and win here, he might have Tiger Hall's number, but Aja interests me there, and it'll be interesting on the day if there's any, how the price working there. But yeah, for me, it's not really the horse you should, or the race you should get stuck in. I make exceptions for Tiger Hall, and who knows, if the ground comes up good, while I personally don't think Tiger Hall will win, look for that good ground, because if it does come up at Cheltenham, he's got half a chance. So.
And obviously going for 3 in a row in the Grand National. And then the final race we're going to look at is the Champion Bumper 2 mile grade 1. Last year's winner was Fernie Hollow. Amboy Allen has won it before. Brian, obviously we've spoken about Patrick Mullins, and this is probably one that's going to give him a headache. Kilcrut at 6 to 4.
Yeah, like this is quite a. I think this is a very competitive Champion Bumper. Personally speaking, yeah, Kilcrut was very good at Leopardstown. He was, but I think what Patrick Mullins said last week was right. He came out last week. They were asking him questions: was his performance as good as what people thought? And he said no. And I think he's like, and look, as I said to you, I'm not an expert in riding horses, but to me, when I was watching the race, there was no real gallop in this race. It was a very slowly ran affair, and the best horse won. It probably would have won if they'd went a little bit faster, but I mean, all he had to do was just buy his time, and the rest of the horses in front of him were just bollocks, and he just kind of just passed them on by and was away in a hack, and it was lovely. Now look, there's no denying that he has serious talents. Like, I mean, he was very good at Navan as well. He was very good at Navan as well before the new year, and he beat. Let's be clear about it by further than Sir Gerhard beat. Let's be clear about it. So that's probably the best piece of form to look at from an Irish perspective. But if I was to back one in this, I'd be backing Eileen Dover. I think that the way that she won the race at Market Raisin, she'll get the fillies allowance. I mean, she was so good. I thought anyway. Like, I don't know what sort of record Pam Sly has at Cheltenham, but I mean, this is a really live contender they have here. Like, she was ready, it was a readily win the way that she won at Market Raisin. Like, she really quickened up the straight, and like, that was on heavy ground. Like, she's won on soft before, and she's won on good ground. So I don't think that no matter what way the track kind of turns up here, it mightn't affect her in any way. I back her at the prices because, as I said to you, I think Kilcrut is a worthy favourite. Like, I'm not trying to put anybody off him by saying that, but I just don't think people should be getting as excited about his win at Leopardstown as he seemed, because of the way because of the pace that was on early. Like, I still would give Sir Gerhard a squeak. We've spoke about this already. Both of these horses have won at Navan and have won nicely at Navan. Very good place to go. Envoy Allen went there the year that he won his Champion Bumper. So like, there's loads of ways to look at it. Like, but the Champion Bumper is a race that, like, these top horses like mightn't always perform in it. Like, Fernie Hollow was given a chance last year, then wasn't given a chance, and then turned up and won. Like, and Appreciated was given the Banker of the Week status and finished second. And it's just like, it can happen that the day turns up and they just mightn't have it in the tank up that hill. And like, I would probably back Eileen Dover. Said to you, I think that she was very good at Market Raisin, has filled me with confidence going into this. I'm not saying she'll beat Kilcrut, but I mean, you could easily go through this race and look at horses at bigger prices and say that, like, you'd be filled with confidence back at them. Like, Grangy was third behind Eileen Dover and fought back and won the bumper at Leopardstown on the Sunday, albeit it was a mare's bumper. But even saying that, she fought back, showed good tenacity in the race, showed she has battling skills, showed she's able to fight them off, showed she's able to get up to the line. So, like, I wouldn't put anyone off back in her. There's loads of them. Harry Alonso was very good at Leopardstown and St. Stephen's Day. He's a 20-1 shot. Like, albeit maybe he mightn't have beaten an all quality field. But I mean, like, it's a race that horses can come from these sort of places that is given as no chance or whatever, and can actually turn up and run well in this race. Like, I mean, to me, it's quite a good race, but because a lot of these haven't run so many times, it's so hard to know who's actually the right horse for it. But when you're looking at the performances of the season, Kilcrud is a very worthy favourite. It's been the most impressive performance by any of these in the race. But as I said, if I was backing one right now, I'd be backing Eileen Dover. But I wouldn't put, I would put nobody off backing I would put nobody off backing Kilcrut. I wouldn't put anybody back off backing Sir Gerhard. But I just think that, like, people need to think about it. Although his performance was very, very impressive, it's hard to know how he's going to perform now when the gallop comes, when it's going to be a lot more competitive. This is going to be hot. It's always a hot race. It's always fast. There's always a good tempo to it. And I mean, it takes a very gutsy performer to win it from the front. And the last horse to do that obviously was Envoy Allen, when Jamie Codd dictated the race and reaped the rewards because he had a machine underneath him. So where the next machine is going to come from is going to be hard to know. I mean, but look, the champion bumper is a race for me where it's so wide open that you mightn't want to have a bet. As I said, if I was having one now, I'd back Eileen Dover, but I think that at 13-8, he's a worthy favourite, but there's way more to this than that.
And probably more will come in the days leading up to Cheltenham. Dan, your take on that? Obviously, what Brian said there about Kilcrut won at the Dublin Racing Festival by 12 lengths, but maybe was it as good as a race or a run as people said?
No, I think it was Simon Rowlands and At the Races did the piece on the speed on this race, and it basically, to long story short, kind of fell apart really in front of Kilcrut. Now he was Jesus, like I was watching that race, had Kilcrut back. I think
it was just the optics of it, Dan, and Patrick Mullins just looking behind him, having so much on it that everyone kind of sits back and goes, "Geez, this horse could be a monster."
Don't get me wrong, that is honestly the best feeling in the world, and hopefully as punters, anyone listening has had that at some point, when you have a horse back like Kilcrut and Patrick Mullins is not moving, and he looks, and I think it was a zoomed in shot, I'm trying to remember in my head.
It was the camera angle, yeah.
It's Jesus, don't get me wrong, I had Kilcrut backed. Very jealous of the lads that haven't backed double figure prices for the champion bumper, and this is me talking here now. It's not saying though that's not an unbelievable bet. It is, don't get me wrong. It's a bit short, 6-4 champion bumper, and we've kind of been saying, geez, yeah, it wouldn't put you off adding them into the ACCAs, that sort of thing. I personally put you off adding Kilcrut to the ACCAs at this sort of price. Like champion bumpers, like some of these horses have only ran once. There's no hurdles. There's so many things that it's Cheltenham a bumper is different to a Leopardstown bumper is different to bumper anywhere really in England or Ireland. And there's enough good horses here that have only run once or twice that we just don't know how good they are. Me personally, I don't think you can be backing Kilcrut at 6-4, 13-8. Like, isn't it? Mullins Tom Mullins, isn't it? Or is it Tony Mullins let the cat out of the bag that at the races preview that what a machine Kilcrut was, and then he went and lost the bumpers. That bumper race that he ran, I think was Navan, not too sure.
That was last year. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, geez, I was so excited. Yeah, I was so excited. I think I'd put a fair amount on him that day. I think he was like 4-1 or something, but. Yeah, and it's brilliant. Kilcrut, like he was unbelievable, but there's enough good horses here. Sir Gerhard, Gordon could be brilliant. Me, if you're asking me for a bet at the moment, 3 Stripe Life, also Gordon Elliott, he's 1-0 from a bumper. You just don't know how good some of these horses are, and it's so hard to take form literally when they're winning by 9 or 10 lengths. So like I'd sooner back someone like 3 Stripe Life at 12-1, but it is a race. I know it's a cliche. I wouldn't get too involved in like a lot. I personally will have a bet, but I'll try and get someone at a bigger price. And geez, I might get a bit giddy on the day and throw Kilcrut maybe in a shoe of a multiple. But after saying all that, but I do think it is too short. So this, still 3 weeks out, 6-4. Envoy Allen went off 2-1 for this bumper. And won it, but he only won by 3/4 length. For him to win it, obviously he's going to be a 3-miler in the future. So, if Envoy Allen's gone off at 2-1 for champion bumper, just shows you that Kilcrut. I don't think he's in Envoy Allen's lead even at bumper level. So for me, I'd leave alone Kilcrut.
Just on Eileen Dover as well, Brian. Do you think because it's Cheltenham and it must? I'd say the feeling of Willie Mullins winning a race at Cheltenham will never go away, but island over from a small stable. Do you think that almost adds a little bit that they put a lot of effort into this horse, and maybe at the value it is good value?
Yeah, I mean, like this is obviously the way that this is, as I said to you, I'm not sure what Pam Sly's record is like at Cheltenham. I don't even know if they've ever even had a Cheltenham Festival winner before, or Cheltenham Festival runner before. I don't really know. I wouldn't know too much about them, but I think they have a serious contender here, and I just think that, as you said, like, because it's a smaller stable, it probably goes under the radar a little bit, and people just still look at it again and say, "Wow, well, gee, it's 6-1. Like, who's this?" Like, I think that that's a lot of it comes into it as well. Like, look, we've covered, you covered this already 100 times. It's such a hard race to analyze, because there's so many, yeah, half of them win by 20 lengths, like, and it's just like, which of them has the bigger scope for improvement? And albeit that, yeah, like the last couple of winners here have been, like, I think the last 4 winners have been Irish. I think since 2014, there's been 6 Irish winners. Like, they have a pretty good record in it in recent times. It's just, and Willie obviously has a great record, but I mean, it's hard, but I would certainly back her at that price. I just think that even the fact that she'll get the mayor's allowance is a thing that puts me into wanting to back her even more against these. So look, it's hard. It's hard, but that'd be the main reason why I'd back her, because she was very impressive with Market Race, and she quickened away well up the straight. It was on very, very sloppy, heavy ground. But as I said, she's won on soft and has won on good ground before, so she seems versatile in what conditions would be like. And seeing as this is the last race of the day, the ground might be a little bit more cut up, because it's the last race on the old course of the festival. So it will be cut up a lot more now than what it would be obviously when the Supreme has been ran. So I just think that from that perspective, I would gladly take her at that price. But look, it's
so just Brian, like, I just kind of I wasn't 100% sure when you're talking issue. I think she's possibly missing Cheltenham for Aintree is the only concern, because I was wondering on my odds checker, I think she's not priced up with Bet365 and a few others, and just looking there now, I think they're looking at the flatter track potentially for Aintree, because she's priced up about half the market still, so she's still in the race, but potentially she might be going Aintree.
Yeah, no, I did hear that as well. That's why I would say that this race is just so wide open, because like that she mightn't be the only horse she mightn't be the only one that will happen to.
And a lot of horses could be avoiding Kilcrowder.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. But I mean, it is hard to analyse. I mean, I would back her, as I said to you, because I was taken by her performance, and she'll get that £7 allowance. If she'll go, great. If she doesn't, so be it. I'd back something else, or I mightn't have a bet at all, because I mean, it's such a wide open race. I mean, the last bet I had in this race was Envoy Allen 2 years ago, because I had it back to 20-1 from the start of the season. It's the only reason why I backed a horse in it. It's not a race that really appeals to me, but as I said to you, if I was back, I'd probably back one at a bigger price. So look, here's
one for you. Yeah, here's one for you. Like, apparently, like, English punters don't get madly stuck into the bumpers. I think it's just a bit of an Irish thing, in terms of like bumpers last race today. Who we backing in the bumper kind of thing. And you do get carried away at the lucky last. You do get carried away, and obviously bumpers tend to be last, but. And if for those that have been to Cheltenham, they'll realise when the bumper's around, there's nobody there. It's just the Irish left, cheering on the favourite or the second favourite that they've backed, and we've all backed the same horse, which is a good place to be. But yeah, it is a kind of interesting dynamic. I don't think the English don't want to generalise too much, but I think it's a well-known fact that it's just a really Irish punting race. We kind of get carried away. I think it's an Irish thing to want a horse to be anything, like Kilcrowder, for example. Like Kilcrowder could be anything, and that's the excitement of it. And obviously bumper horses are. So three slight light for me anyway, but as Brian said, I agree. I'd wait for the day, and I'd personally be taking someone at a bigger price. Sure, we've had a couple of big price winners in winning. William Mullins has won it 10 times, and didn't you say Patrick Mullins has only ridden once? Was it Champagne Fever?
He's won it twice. He won it twice and Champagne Fever. So like he knows how to win it. Like, but I mean,
none of Willie's last 5 champion bumpers winners were returned at a starting price of less than 11-1. So.
There you go. So look for Willie Mullins' third string, not even second.
Yeah, that's why you have to look at. Yeah, that's why you have to look at Grand G and all these sort of other things that come into it. And I mean, that all comes down to what we're saying already. When all of these horses are winning races by 10 lengths, sure, it's just all about which of them improves the best when they come up against what are called so-called machines that could turn out not to be. Like, so look, it's a very tough. It's actually a race I really enjoy. I do. I really enjoy the champion bumper because it's such a big field, and I mean, it does create good stories because it's although in England there's a lot of professionals riding bumpers, but a lot of the Irish amateurs would ride in this, and obviously Jamie Codd winning it a couple of years ago was fantastic to see it. He's won it twice. It's good to see all these things. Obviously, Katie Walsh won it in 2018 on relegate. Like, I mean, these stories can come out of it as well, and that's another thing that'll be missed this year at the festival. That they won't be there. So look, it is a good. I really enjoy it. It's a good race. But it's a very tough. It's a lottery could pick you the winner of this race.
Yeah, just before you come in, it's probably going to be the longest now champion bumper preview on YouTube here, but it's interesting. A lot of flat jockeys used to ride in the race, and they said, Jesus, it's like they got some gallop, and it's a messy race, and because they're so used to good ground and stuff, they come back, their silks are absolutely muddy. Like, I know a lot of the flat jockeys in the past have ridden it, but it's a different ball game. While it is a 2-mile flat race, essentially, a champion bumper is a lot different to a flat race. So yeah, it's as Brian says, it's an exciting race, and for me, second string of Gordon Elliott's a 3-stripe life. I wouldn't put you off in each way price, 12-1.
So I'm going to get your nap of day 2 of the Cheltenham Race and Festival. I'll start with you, Brian. A man from Trim, any inside information?
Oh, he's raging. He got asked first there.
I actually really don't know. Like, this is such a. I wouldn't put Monkfish up as a nap because, like, you have to put a nap at a price, in my opinion. You could back it at 8 to 11, but I mean 8 to 11 doesn't appeal to me as a nap price. I don't know. This is such a tough day. Like, there's so much depth to a lot of these races that you could make cases. We've gone through it all already. Just to touch on the cross country, I would agree with what Dan said. I really enjoy it as well. I like that, the way that you can get up close to the action. I was never at it. I'm mad to go and see it. It's hard to see what sort of roar will be left in the Tiger now. Personally, I wouldn't back him at 5-1. I wouldn't back him at all. If he doesn't win this race and gets retired afterwards, it shouldn't be a problem to anybody. He owes Gordon and Jigginstown absolutely nothing. He didn't look great. He was a distant 6th at Navan last week. He was pulled up in the cross country at Cheltenham in November. So, like, it's hard to know how much he has left in the tank. But other than that, I mean, God, I really don't know. Right, as I said to you, I have Galère de Menel backed, but if I was to pick a nap of the day, I'd pick Bob Ollinger. I would back Bob Ollinger as a nap for the day in the first race. It's probably the one that I would be most confident in having a few quid on out of all these here.
For Henry de Bromet.
So yeah, that'd be my pick. Yeah.
Dan, I'll go for yours.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for a horse that's 3-0 in Cheltenham and is 12-1 for the Champion Chase. And I just have a feeling I've been there to Champion Chase and watched Special Tiara win when a race kind of falls apart. And I've been there when obviously last year when Politogog won in the race. When I say it fell apart, the favourite fell apart. I just think, Arkle, like, she'll be primed for this race. She's 3-0 for Cheltenham, as I said, at 12-1 in the Champion Chase. I can see her being thereabouts. I just see it. I think Chacun Pour Soi, there is that Cheltenham question, and 12-1 for Put the Kettle On, I think, is too big a price. So for me, she is my nap for Wednesday. But as Brian said, it's a tough day. They're all tough days, aren't they? I was looking forward to this over Tuesday more, but Jesus, it's tough to pick the winners. But at the moment, if you want to put me a bet on, Put the Kettle On, 12-1 each way.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep my eye on Eileen Dover in the bumper. I just think that story could be one of those Cheltenham stories.
Entry, unfortunately, Sean.
Maybe. We'll keep an eye on that one. But that's all from us for the day 2 preview of Cheltenham, the St. Patrick's Day preview. Just
to say, we'll also be having a live Cheltenham preview. We've got a couple of guests at the moment on Tuesday, March the 9th, which is a week before Cheltenham. And it's going to be live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter from 7:30. So there'll be a poster up on social media over the week, but it'll just give people to leave comments, that sort of thing. And Cheltenham Festival previews, Brian, yourself, they're kind of like a bit mad, live. Obviously, we're going to try and recreate that as best we can with Zoom, but yeah, a few guests lined up for that potentially. So keep an eye on that on our social media. Should be posted this week. So that's Tuesday, March 9th, 7:30.
Yeah, so that's something again to keep an eye out as we build up to Cheltenham. I'd like to thank the King of Trim, Brian Dowling, for joining us. Brian, thanks very much.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks obviously to Dan again.
Cheers.
And make sure to check out all our other episodes of the Tackling Sport podcast, wherever you get your podcast feeds. And stay with us as we count down to Cheltenham over the next few weeks, and we'll have Premier League predictions in the week. So that's all from us. Take care, and thanks for listening.
Cheers.